Hello, welcome to Virtuous Teacher, and I am your host, Richie Knox. In this episode, we'll be talking about dealing with difficult students. If you're a teacher, this is probably one of the most scary and terrifying things that you have to deal with, and I'm here. I got your back. Before we get started, if you're interested in a one-on-one session, feel free to email me at consultations@virtuousteacher.com. You can also book me that way by going to bookings@virtuousteacher.com. And of course, check out the Virtuous Teacher podcast. All right. Just dropped the first episode. So extremely happy about that. This is episode 2. If you would like to donate, feel free to do so via Cash App by just looking me up, Richie Knox. I have a chocolate chip cookie emoji. And what else? There's one more thing. Oh yeah, if you would like to check out my merch, I do design shirts. Check out bhshirts.com. Okay, so let's just jump right in. The first thing that you have to do when you step into the battlefield is what I'll call it, is turn your emotions off. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Children, especially difficult children, they thrive off of emotion and the teacher's response. And let's just put it this way. Energy transfers. So when that student is, saying things, outbursts, they're projecting energy into the atmosphere. And all it takes is for you to make the slightest of reactions, and that energy transfers back. They're already getting energy from other students because most likely they're the fire starter. They're the ones that's, creating the issues. And you're going to have a couple followers kind of project that back to that leader. I like to call them leaders because that's what they are. They're just leading in the wrong direction. But one thing that you mustn't do is, lead with attitude, anger, upset face, anything. You want to be emotionless. I think one of my best examples of this is the Matrix. When Neo was getting shot at and he just leaned back and the bullets just went past. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't panicking. It's almost as if he already knew what was going to happen. And that's how you want to come at most of these situations, unless you are absolutely forced into reacting. I get that. But if it is a situation in which you can, sustain and refrain from projecting anger or attitude back, then you certainly want to do it. You want to remain calm. It's very difficult for a child to, um, you know, get energy back or receive energy when the teacher is calm. All right, they're going crazy. They're using profanity. They're using obscenities, and you're like, "Excuse me, can we? Are you okay? Like, can you please step over here to the side? Can you do? It's just it's a calm demeanor. It's a calm voice, and I believe that is the key, the recipe to deactivating some of those behaviors, and that's what you have to do. The next thing I want you to do is grab a pad or a notebook, anything to document. You're not just going to be silent for silence sake. You're going to be silent so you can listen. All right. I always tell my students this. You were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And I'll go even further. You were given 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth for a reason, so that you can see and listen twice as much as you talk. Talking is overrated. I always say that. And when it comes to teaching, especially if you're engaging with a difficult student, talking, the very act of talking, can get you caught up in trouble. For one, saying just about anything will have that student react to something. That student can't react if there's nothing to react to. All right. Imagine them saying, "Oh, you look funny," and you just don't say anything at all. It's nothing to react to. But if they say you look funny, you're like, no, well, no, I don't. Yes, you do. So it's something immediately there to react to. So I would say, grab a pad and do most of your talking with these beautiful things here. As they're saying things, you're going to document what they're saying. As they're doing things, you're going to document what they're doing. You're documenting words and actions. All right. And this is extremely important because at some point, once this whole charade is over, you're going to have to report. And it's going to be very difficult to report anything if you have to sit there and recall everything he said or everything she said or everything he or she did. But if you're writing it down while they're acting out, because usually that's what it is, they're acting. They have an audience. And the last person that needs to be in the crowd is you. You need to be on the side documenting and giving very, very clear instructions. That's another part. Clear instructions. Can you please have a seat? Right? You're not worried about getting in the back and forth with this student. You're trying to keep him and the rest of the class safe. So as they're acting out or they're doing these really weird behaviors, you're documenting and you're saying, can you please be quiet? You're very loud. Can you please not use profanity? You're doing it as if you're almost like a robot. And I hate to use that because it has such a negative connotation, but I would say the best teachers as it relates to dealing with disciplinary issues are very robotic because they're not expressive, they're not reactive, they're very stoic, and they document. Okay, imagine a teacher that was actually a robot dealing with a behavioral issue. How do you think that robot will react? That's about what you want to try to mimic or mirror. Okay, that robot is not going to react to, oh, your mama this, your mama that. Not necessarily. It's going to document and then give out a command. You kind of want to follow that script. It might seem a little odd, but it's supposed to. When a student is doing these weird and obscene behaviors, and you're very calm, that's going to be off-putting. When you're not, you're not projecting back, you're not arguing back, that's going to be off-putting. And you're just documenting. And eventually, the student will recognize that you're writing something down, and that's going to catch his or her attention. They're going to say, what are you writing down? And then it might turn into a game, so be prepared for that. They'll say something, see you write it. They'll say something else, see you write it. But it's okay, because at some point, that dopamine rush that they're getting from their audience is going to come way down, and they're going to be forced to deal with reality. And I'll tell you why. Because after you've finished taking notes or you're satisfied and you have enough information that you can, tell the right, individuals, that's when you get on the phone. Okay. You cannot do anything here if you don't have that student's phone number. All right. That's one of the first things you should do. Make sure you have access to, parents, kids, parents, their emergency somebody. Okay. You want to get in contact with the person who knows them best, i.e. their mother or their father, okay? And when you're on the phone, you want to call right then and there. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is to allow the student to destroy an entire hour of class and then leave. And then, possibly face trouble once he or she gets home. We don't want that. We want to call that student's bluff, because what are they trying to do? They're trying to convince you that they are immune to trouble. They're trying to, make you feel as if, oh, there's nothing that can happen to me. I'm doing this because I'm big and bad. That's kind of what they're trying to get you to believe. All right, but we know better, right? We've all been that age before, and we know how it works. So what I like to do is I call the parent right then and there. I'll stop the entire class. And here's what happens once that takes place. First off, they are a little nervous, and you might see a shift in their behavior because now they have to answer for all the things that they just said and did. You'll also hear the class get extremely quiet because now they want to see the reaction. They're taking notes so that they can figure out whether or not they want to try this in the future. And that's why it's so important that you do this right. Document, get on the phone with the parent, and prepare to do your thing. Have some fun with this. Don't ever break character. Stay very stoic, very, very, one note. You're not too expressive. And when you get on the phone with a parent, hopefully you get a parent, read your notes very clearly. Okay. And what will happen at this particular time, that student will start to roll their eyes. They'll start to smack their teeth. They'll start to try to talk over you through the phone. No, that's not true. That's not true. And you just continue to read because that parent knows their child, and most likely they'll be on your side. For the most part, this is not a proof positive thing. Sometimes the parents will still take the side of the child. Oh, what did you do? You mean, what did I do when he called me a Snickers bar? I mean, come on. So that happens, right? We know that. But anyway, you want to make sure you do that. You want to document the behavior, call the parent. Now, sometimes the behavior is extremely egregious. At this particular point, maybe a write-up is necessary. I would say if the student is as difficult as I picture a student being in my brain, a write-up is definitely something you want to engage in. Now, the write-up can take place after the student leaves, okay? But you want to make sure you get that call right then and there because you want to see, or you want the audience to see that student vulnerable. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. What I'm saying is when that student steps on top of that stage and he's screaming or she's screaming at the top of their lungs using obscenities and things like that, he's basically calling on the followers because that's kind of what he is or she is. They're the leader of the class, and unfortunately, this leader is leading the class in the wrong direction. So you want them to see, the followers to see, that this person is human, and he's still a child, or she's still a child. And the way you show that is when they're on the phone, no, I didn't, mama. No, I didn't. It wasn't me. That's how you bring them back down to size, right? And you do it completely respectfully. You don't do anything negative. You don't say anything negative. Rule number 1, don't ever disrespect a child. Okay, because once you do that, you are the child. You know what I mean? I heard this one expression: there has to be at least one adult in the room, and that's one of the realest things I've ever heard. You're in a room with all these students and these children, there has to be at least one adult in the room. And what that means is if a child starts to go off, you can't go off with them and exhibit the same behavior that you're trying to, stop. So that's the wrong move. But once the class is over, maybe even once you get home, I never take work home. So let's backtrack. Maybe once the work day is over, and let's say you're not leaving immediately after work, that's when you want to do a formal write-up so that you can document the behavior with administration. Now, if you're that student, you're looking at this thing kind of sideways now because you had your little dopamine rush, you had your moment. But here's what happened. Imagine you're the student that's having the difficulties with behavior. First off, the teacher did not respond negatively. That might make you feel a little guilty. They documented everything accurately. Don't forget that word. And they gave an accurate, accurate reading of your behaviors. So now when you get home, you got to deal with that, with mom, dad, auntie, whoever you live with. And then you come back to school the next day or even the next week, and, an administrator is saying, hey, we heard that on August 28th, you did this, and that. The report was well written because apparently the teacher took notes, and we do have to give you in-school suspension. We do have to do something to that effect. And there you have it. Okay. Here's one thing I cannot guarantee. I can't guarantee that this student is going to change directions because I don't know how you're going to implement it. What I can say is anytime I've done it, I've rarely had the issue happen again. And for the few individuals that were gutsy enough to have the same issue occur again, they did it in a way that was not as intense as the first time. And then by the time I did it the second time, my same routine, document, call, document, the behavior had been completely shifted. It's very, 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 very rare. If at all, never happened 3 times with the same student, okay? But it will boil down to how you execute this particular strategy. But once this is all done, you called the parents in the middle of class. I know you have things to teach. I get that. But let me put it this way. If you don't address this situation, you'll never be able to teach. You understand? So you're actually at war for the attention of your students. You're almost at war for the space in your class. You don't want every day that class starts, that student to be there ready to just take over the whole hour. You don't want to do that. So what is more important than, protecting the safety of your class? And let's talk about the obvious thing. Not every student in that class wants to be involved with this one student's drama. Some kids actually come to your class to learn. What about them? Can you teach them with this student going off? Of course not. All right. So you actually owe it to them and to yourself to stop the entire class. It's almost saying it this way. Can you drive a car with a flat tire? Not at all. I'll just ignore it. Oh, it happens all the time. No, it doesn't. You can't go anywhere. So you do have to stop. Deal with that flat tire before you can move again. But once you have done so, you've documented their behaviors, you've kept calm, and you've called their home, then you move on immediately. All right. Immediately. I say that because you don't want to spend an entire hour on this one student. You don't want them to steal the educational moment that's in place, but you do have to deal with it. Here's some things that you do not do. Do not, under any circumstance, kick the kid out of class. And here's exactly why. You put that child in danger because now they're unsupervised. And if they're going off in a small space like this, imagine how much trouble they can get into and going off in an entire school. So then you put yourself at risk. We don't want to kick a student out of class, okay? I know that it's difficult. Even if you have to sacrifice an entire class, under no circumstance should you ever kick a kid out. Try your best not to get administration involved. Sometimes, especially if you're a female teacher, your first go-to is to call Mr. This or Mr. That because you know that they're going to be a little bit more respected than you might be in that particular moment. But I'm going to challenge you and push back a little bit and say, you know what? I've had some very, very strong female teachers. And let me tell you, they're just as capable or just as scary as any male teacher out there. Because here's what happens when you call a male teacher or someone of authority. You lose authority. Okay, so you don't want to do that necessarily. I do understand that you're probably thinking of it this way. I want to get back to teaching. Slow down, because now you're going to have to call that administrator or that male teacher every time. And then you won't ever teach. How are you going to teach? And then you're also becoming a burden. They won't tell you to your face, but they're going to say this teacher lacks classroom management ability. And you don't want to have that reputation. That's a very hard reputation to expunge. All right, so try your best not to call. Another thing that I would say is a big no-no is arguing with the student. You do not want to argue with the child. All right, when you do that, it's crazy, right? Like, what is a person that's, what I don't know how to say this, but I'm gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. Who's crazy when a person's arguing with a crazy person? All right, I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like you can't fix the issue if you're a part of the issue. So what I mean by that is, if the child is using profanity and yelling obscenities, you don't want to double down on that and start doing it too. That makes you look even more childish than the kid, and that's something that you absolutely cannot do. All right, here are some emergency tactics should things get completely off rails. All right, call the main office to extract the child. Okay, so you've called the parents. Let's say you got a voicemail. Let me give you a little hack or a little tip. If you get the voicemail, still leave the message anyway, as if you're talking to the parent. It's a skill. You have to learn it. Talk to that voicemail like it's them, and then when you hang up, make it seem like you were talking to a parent who did not want to talk to the child, and you just hung up the phone. Sometimes that will save you. Sometimes it won't. All right. You can even say, "Hey, your parents are going to talk to you when you get home," which is still the truth. You're not lying. But you don't want it. You don't want to necessarily make it so obvious that you're talking to a voicemail, because now they're like, "Well, I'm gonna get in trouble anyway, so I might as well just go crazy now." So you don't want to do that. But if it gets to the extreme and you just can't, this child is just not going to work, call the main office to have the child extracted. I hate calling the main office for the exact same reasons I said don't bring anybody to your room to fix your problem. But sometimes it's absolutely necessary. One of my examples is I had a child who was just screaming at the top of their lungs. And it was just very, very difficult to teach through that. But somehow, some way, I was able to get through it, and it made me very happy. I said, you know what? I'm definitely the guy for this particular, concept as far as teaching master skills, because you know that was tough. I would say 80% of teachers in America, or maybe 60% of the teachers in the world would have just folded because he was screaming nonstop. I had a strategy, and I won't say it in this episode. I'll share it later. All right, last but not least, my last and final pointer to address a situation that is completely difficult, very rare behavioral outcomes. Here's one thing you can do: send a handwritten letter, because you were documenting things. You're not going to send your documentation, but you're going to take some time, send a handwritten letter or even a typed letter. Let me clarify. Just send a letter of some sort using your real words. You don't want to have like something that the school has. No, you want to write it out. How are you, Mrs.? How are you, Mr.? Today in science class, I spoke to Johnny about A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and he was not responsive, so forth and so forth. Why do you want to send a letter home? I'll tell you exactly why. Because sometimes the phone numbers in the school system are outdated. And the kids know that because they've been acting up in 4 or 5 different classes, and they've been threatened to have their parents call 4 or 5 different times. They get home, nothing happens. That means one thing. That means that the number in the system is outdated. So here's how you circumvent that. You send a letter home, and bingo. All right, that letter gets there in about 2 or 3 days, and they'll come in with a completely different attitude because now they realize that you'll go above and beyond to make sure that your classroom space is safe. All right. I hope that these pointers and these tips helped you out. And if so, you know what to do. Throw a like on the video. That definitely helps me to expand. It's a new channel. You see that right now. And also feel free to comment. Let me know any strategies that I missed. And of course, subscribe, because I have these things coming out nonstop. All right. But with that being said, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.